Hey everybody, how you doing? So I was working on what was a pretty fun Marked for Death Banshee build with sonar and resonance and Rubico, and I was kind of testing that out last night and refining it. There's some VODs on my stream of me playing that in Steel Path. It was pretty fun. Didn't seem really OP whatsoever. Um, so then the nerf happened today to Marked for Death. And so apparently there were some bugs where Marked for Death damage was propagating with some extra mods applying or it being able to crit more, stuff like that. In addition, they also removed it from being able to apply damage over the target's health. And so it really killed a lot of the use cases for this ability. I think the only frame that can really use it now is Banshee, and that's because of her augment, Savage Silence. And so Savage Silence causes all the enemies to take increased finisher damage, and that scales with strength. So this build, I have very low duration. I'm actually even going to lower the duration even more. And so the reason I'm doing this is to be able to recast silence more, or to recast silence faster, because you can trigger the stun on silence either by moving out of range of an enemy and back into range, and it will stun them again. So you can go like a short range build, but I don't want low range because I want my Marked for Death to still do damage in as large of an area as possible. So I chose the low duration route because Marked for Death will just stay on an enemy until you do damage to them. So you don't really need duration for this. So why does this work on Banshee? So let's look at how non-finisher damage works even on Banshee. So I'll zoom in here. So here's a normal Rubico shot. Okay, now I'm going to Mark for Death that guy. I'm going to try and get a headshot as well to be consistent. Okay, so as you can see, that damage did basically nothing to any of the targets besides the primary target. And part of that is because how I believe this is working now is that it's both so they removed the damage type or the elemental damage carrying over from Marked for Death. So before, if you hit something with corrosive damage, the AoE would be corrosive damage, and so it could actually do 75% more damage if they had ferrite armor, stuff like that. So they supposedly removed that interaction. So even though my Rubico is corrosive, you can see I did more damage to the initial guy, significantly less damage to the other Grineer. Corrupted. And also it was getting mitigated by armor. So it barely did anything. Now we can do this with a finisher. So finishers deal true damage. And so why that's super important is that true damage completely ignores armor. So you can cast Marked for Death, cast your Silence, do a finisher, and they all die. Now, does this work for all finishers? So for that, we can very easily test this with Ash. And so I have a similar Ash build. I got over 200%. So I changed my build from how it was before. I wanted to get over 200% strength because that brings my Marked for Death damage up. And so I believe, oh, I'm sorry. So they actually capped the Marked for Death damage at 75%. So that's kind of one of the weaknesses that I'm going to be showing with Ash. And so we can do something similar with Ash. So let me just spawn these guys again. So this is going to be a pretty short video. I kind of just checked it out at lunch. Haven't tested this too much, but was a little sad about the nerf. And okay, so we see that, yes, it definitely did true damage to these guys because they're all missing, 75% of their health. But it didn't kill them because they capped Marked for Death, so it can't do full damage. The only reason Banshee works is because it's still being treated as a finisher. And so her silence aura is amplifying the damage they take enough to where they die, right? So you could, you know, get around that by using a new core, right? You could new core everything. And so if you new core stuff and then you mark for death and then you finish them, then it will work. Because you know the way mark for death is working now is because it can only do, you know, it caps out. I don't think anybody can actually kill stuff reliably with marked for death outside of Banshee. And the issue with Banshee then becomes, okay, well, you can definitely kill stuff because with Savage Silence, you're going to be doing a ton of damage. But then you run into the same issues Marked for Death had before, where it's blocked by line of sight. It does take a decent amount of setup. You know, you both have to have a build specifically tailored for Marked for Death, and you also need, you know, the setup. There has to be some kind of setup condition because this will really only work with finishers now. So you know, there's frames that could easily take advantage of this, such as Ash, Banshee, Equinox, any frame that can open enemies up for finishers without doing damage. Wukong can actually do that as well. However, because the damage share is capped, only Banshee can actually kill groups of enemies with this. So I changed up. I was a little sad because I was messing around with Banshee builds, and she seemed really fun with Marked for Death. But the builds had to change a lot because of the patch. And so we can take this into Steel Path, and you know, we can kind of see how this actually fares. Now, before the patch, Marked for Death builds could run no defensive items at all because they would just rely on Arcane Trickery proccing from finisher attacks, and you didn't have to worry about defensive stuff whatsoever. Not the case anymore. So now you do have to worry about defensive stuff because you can, you know, very easily die. I don't know why this isn't working. Oh, there we go. Yeah, see, even I was right here, and for some reason these guys didn't take damage because of line of sight. So is it still power? Yeah, see, look at that. It's I mean, the build definitely had weaknesses already. So yeah, I think the only frame that can really take advantage of this now is Banshee. I don't really even think it's all that strong, honestly. I mean, I didn't think Marked for Death was honestly that strong before. You know, it takes setup, it takes quite a bit of investment, and just the numbers. It looked really amazing because you were doing, like, you know, all this damage. Okay, and like that, just the melee targeted that guy instead of this guy, and you know, it just, I don't know. It made me a little sad because I really feel like this nerf wasn't justified. I thought it was a cool build that made some niche builds like a lot more relevant. And this melee targeting is really killing me. Because if I don't kill them while silence is active, then they won't die. So there we go. This build is way more energy hungry. So it's pretty easy to run out of energy with this build. Even though I have like a lot of efficiency, this build does not skimp on efficiency. You're no longer guaranteed to get trickery procs, because you pretty much were guaranteed to get trickery procs before. So yeah, I don't know. It's passable now. but it's not nearly as good. I honestly don't. Yeah, see, it's, you know, you don't have trickery, so you die. It's just not nearly as good. And the other thing is, when you're running this build, you are locked into this playstyle. Like, this build just cannot do anything else. I have no defensive stuff. So now I'm out of energy. I literally need to like run and hide, maybe drop a pad, you know. So this has so much investment. Yeah, okay, my health strum is kind of screwing me over there. So this has so much investment, and it's still not even that great. And I can't finish this guy for some reason. So yeah, I was a little sad. I thought the melee variants of Marked for Death were always a little, I don't want to say cheesy, but I thought they were stronger. I really liked the Banshee like resonance one. I thought that was really fun with like a sniper. It was a really cool playstyle, which isn't possible anymore. So yeah, I just kind of want to show some of the impacts of the Marked for Death nerf. I really wish they'd taken like the bullet jump approach on this one. And so what I mean by that is, when people were, you know, kind of breaking game mechanics and coptering across missions, they just incorporated it as bullet jumping. Marked for Death was really cool, and it made some niche frames like Banshee and Ashe stronger. But frankly, Ashe is already one of the best frames for really ultra late game content. His ability to abuse slash procs is phenomenal. His passive is one of the best passives in the whole game. And you can just take Ashe with a Sepfon Nakana and Exodia Hunt and completely demolish max level enemies with ease. So I don't think that there is really much justification for this. I get it was a bug fix, but I wish they had kept the ability's power close to where it was before. So anyways, that was like, and I'll flash the build up again. So this is the only build I could really think of to take advantage of the current iteration of Marked for Death. Kind of like high risk, very, you don't actually need Blind Rage here. This is kind of a, you could honestly just put like Intensify to ease up your energy constraints. So you could just use Intensify, that's fine. It should do enough damage with the amp from Savage Silence. So that's kind of why I ran out of energy. But, you know, you can mess around with it. I'd love to hear if people have Marked for Death builds that are working. That would be awesome. I threw Brief Respite on here to give her a chance of surviving. You know, because you're really living on CCing enemies constantly. I would probably want to find some place to throw Rolling Guard in here, maybe instead of Augur Reach. That could probably be really nice. I don't even know if Trickery is worth it. It's very inconsistent. I don't even know if it's worth a mod slot. So, like I said, let me know if you've come up with a good Savage Silence build. I'd really love to hear about it, or a Marked for Death build. So that's what I've got. Sorry, the build video I was working on kind of got nerfed with the patch, but you know, thanks everybody for watching. Hope you have a good week.